Hello everyone! It's a few days after Christmas and it's chilly here, 35 degrees-ish, but no wind and a lot of the snow has melted. There's some icy patches here and there, but we've been letting them out the last few days and they have been really happy about that. So today I wanted to go over the many options and methods for feeding your chickens. And so we're going to get right into it because there's a lot to cover here. The first one I want to talk about is most likely what you'll use when you're first starting out, and it's often what people continue with for years or forever, and that is buying bagged chicken feed at your local store or grain mill. In terms of the top 6 brands, you have Kalmbach Henhouse Reserve, Nutrina NatureWise, New Country Organics, Scratch and Peck Feeds, or Kalmbach Feeds Layer Crumbles or Layer Pellets, just a different division of Kalmbach, and Mana Pro brand. And these are just a few of the brands. We could go on for days only discussing those feed brands. I will put links though to the brands that I'm talking about and that I'm kind of recommending. The good thing about chicken feed from the store is that there are tons of options and they're all, or I will say mostly, nutritionally balanced. You can try all kinds of brands and styles of feed to determine what your chickens like best and what works best for you and your budget, because that is certainly something you'll have to consider. So that brings me to my next topic, balancing that quality item with your budget. Quality chicken feed is really important. If they aren't getting quality feed, you will not get quality eggs. You may not get eggs at all. Laying hens are sensitive to all kinds of environmental factors, and their feed is certainly one of those. But things like environmental stressors, lack of water, lack of food, or food that is not nutritionally balanced will shut that egg-laying factory down in your hens temporarily until that issue is resolved. And regarding egg quality, you can end up with soft shell eggs, eggs that are almost shell-less, misshapen, or that just kind of taste off. So some general rules that I follow are these. You don't want to buy the cheapest bag on the shelf. On the other hand, chicken feed is expensive. So you need to balance this not only with your budget, but with one of the reasons that you wanted to stop buying store-bought eggs in the first place, which is the price that you would normally pay for eggs at the store. So if you're spending far more in feed each month than you would just to buy eggs at the store, you really need to consider that. And I'll do another video on this later, by the way, but chicken keeping costs and whether or not it's worth it for you, the fact that you will incur some costs to start up and ways to save money or make a little money on your chickens as you go forward, we'll cover that in another video. Now, buying from a grain mill, here's what I know about this in a general sense, as I've never done it. It can be a cost-effective option, especially for non-GMO or specialized feeds, but you'll need to call ahead or visit your local grain mill to check their specific poultry offerings and minimum purchase requirements. Mills focus on quality, offering bulk options and sometimes fresher feed than big box stores do, but they may require larger orders or different product mixes than what you're used to from the store. So I only buy 2 to 3 bags of feed per month, and we're happy with what we're doing now, so I've not looked into this, but I know it is a route that some people go and they do prefer it. So why buy bagged food? Can I just feed them kitchen scraps and let them free range? Can't they just eat some cracked corn in the winter that I might buy occasionally and free range? So not exactly. Bagged food, again, is very nutritionally balanced, and even free-ranging chickens need some kind of supplemental feed to make sure that they're getting a well-rounded diet. Type and availability of bugs and worms that they find on your property will vary, and it's not going to be the same as someone else's. You also have to consider, for example, do you have berries that they can eat and reach off of lower? What else are they actually eating from your property? Do you even know? How large is your property? Do you have several acres that they can scratch and peck at, or just 1 acre? They will tear up your space, by the way, if they don't have a large enough area to roam, making it a complete dirt pile and grassless, and therefore bugless, because there will be overgrazing if you have them free ranging, if you have a large number of them free ranging on a smaller space. So keep that kind of thing in mind as well. So they may eat through their outdoor bug supply pretty quickly if you have them roaming in a small area. Freshly laid egg, just a few minutes old. So exciting. So the second item I wanted to talk about is chicken treats or healthy food supplements. Cracked corn, seed, and grain treat mixes, which will look like loose birdseed, black soldier fly larvae, mealworms, dried in bags at the store, or other insect trail mixes. I'm interrupting prime egg laying time, so they're not exactly happy with me. You can also feed them cracked or used eggshells, crushed oyster shells for extra calcium, which is very important for egg production and egg quality. Now, I don't do this for a couple of reasons. When it comes to feeding them their own shells, while it doesn't always happen, it can happen that they decide they want to eat their eggs right away after laying them every time. Or another hen might decide to eat someone else's eggs right away, and then you don't have eggs, which is the whole point of getting... which was the whole point of you getting these tiny raptors in the first place. And I've heard from those who buy the crushed oyster shell that while it does make stronger, better eggs and shells overall, it can make the eggs taste fishy. So I don't do these things. I don't want to create any cannibalism situations too with the eggs, not the chickens themselves, but I don't want to create a situation where they start eating their own eggs or eating someone else's eggs because they realize they like the taste of that. Sometimes eggshells do break, and they will clean those up. They will eat the egg yolk and the shell in all. So it does happen naturally, but I don't intentionally give that to them. All right, I decided to get out of there because they were way too noisy. So another snack is kitchen scraps, which you need to make sure they're safe to eat. Some fresh garden foods, such as tomatoes, for example, that chickens should not eat in excess, or some say not at all. Consider things like that. Look up things that chickens shouldn't eat, basically. This is the egg song, by the way. So this is the noise they often make when they're laying eggs. They announce it to each other. So there would be certainly other foods that you shouldn't give your chickens, such as processed foods, things that are high in sugar. I've heard milk, certainly things like that. But if you're growing, so if you're feeding them extras from your garden or table scraps, just search online to see whatever is safe to give them or not. Also, don't feed anything moldy to chickens. This can make them sick and be deadly to them. These things obviously give them some added nutrition and variety in their diet, which, just like people, they do appreciate. They will get bored if they're being fed the same bag of feed over and over, and there are no occasional treats. These are also helpful to give during times of stress, such as molting season in the fall, if you have any cold winters or winters where they aren't going to be outside much, if at all, and they can't forage for things from the ground like they do in other seasons. The next thing that I want to talk to you about is fermented feed. And I recently tried this. I really like it. I like the idea behind why we want to do this sometimes. And the chickens do seem to like it as well. So some of the things that you're going to need to do this are some kind of dedicated feed bucket. A lot of people use 5-gallon buckets. I have this smaller one. But just something that's going to be just for that fermented feed option. Not that you're going to be using it for anything else, obviously. You'll also need a strainer, something like this. And then, of course, the lid that goes with the bucket. And then you can use any feed. So I'm just using the current layer crumbles that we use. But this could be any feed. So that kind that looks like loose bird seed, a different kind of feed, doesn't matter the brand, etc. They're all going to have the properties. If you're buying a bagged feed from the store, they're all going to have the properties in it that are going to make this process work. So you should be fine there. You're also going to want some kind of separate feed container to put it in. The last time that I went to the feed store, this is just what they had left. It wasn't super expensive, so I grabbed a couple of these. So I pour my fermented slop into these. Obviously it needs to be separate from your dry grain feed dishes that you use on the regular basis. So some of the reasons for using this option are that it's really beneficial to bird health. It's kind of like a natural probiotic for them. It also gives them something different to enjoy, a different way to enjoy the same food. It can be a lot easier for them to digest because of it's softer and it's got that liquid content. And Some people say that it reduces their feed cost by about 30% of whatever they normally spend on feed by doing this process on a regular basis. The reason for that, of course, is because you're saturating it with water, so it's going to kind of help fill their bellies faster because of that water content. So then all you're going to do is put enough water in with the feed to just cover the feed. And so I didn't fill up my bucket here with feed because I wanted to have room for the water, but also for that rising process that's going to happen. I'll see if I can show you here. So I hope you can see that, but it's just barely covered. And actually I'm going to add a little bit more water because it's already absorbing quickly. So then what you're going to do is just cover this and let it sit for at least 24 hours. So you're going to cover it with your lid here, let it sit for 24 hours, and then you can already start scooping it out and using it. And so the thing with this is you're not necessarily going to use it all at once. So whatever amount you put in here, again, it's going to expand. You're going to kind of use it, come back the next day, put some more in if you want into the feed dishes for them to eat. Part of what's going to happen, obviously, is that natural fermentation process. So if I leave this with the lid on and I go pull it off tomorrow and I take a look and take a smell, it should smell kind of like that, barley, oats, grainy, kind of cooked smell, have an earthy smell to it, but not a bad odor, maybe a little bit of a sour odor, that's fine, but it will smell like, wet grain feed, etc. It will also be bubbling. That it will be actively bubbling, not just have bubbles sitting on it, but you'll actively see bubbles coming up. That's that fermentation process happening. That's a good thing. You don't want it to smell bad, like something that would not be good for animals to eat. You'll know a bad smell versus just a outdoorsy smell, okay? And there can't be, again, no mold. Chickens cannot eat moldy foods. Do not do that. And so that brings me to another point. As you're scooping some out, and then maybe you want to add more grain, more water, or you're still working with the same amount of grain you had before and you just need to add a little bit more water, you can do that each day. You need to stir it at least once, maybe twice a day. That prevents that mold factor from happening. When I tried this before, it was going great for like 2 days in a row. Then I got really sick, really busy with life. Life still has to go on, of course. School, work, momming, wifing, all of that stuff. So doing all of that while I was sick, and this was not a priority. So I went like 4 days without stirring it. I went down there, mold everywhere. So then in that case, you're losing feed, losing the value of the feed that you spent money on, and having to, throw it all away, clean out your bucket and start over. So definitely stir it at least once a day. Some people say twice a day. But again, I just want to reiterate that you can, you can feed this to them on an almost daily basis if you want. You can feed it to them over a week's time and then just say, I don't have time to fool with that this coming next week or few weeks. It's just another option, another way to help maximize feed with your chickens and, give them some additional health benefits. Okay, we are going to just do a little walk and talk on another part of the property that we haven't really shown you guys before. So for these last couple of food options to wrap up, here we go. So next up is protein options in the form of meat for your chickens. Chickens are omnivores and will actually eat raw meat scraps, and that is okay. That's good for them. Obviously, don't give them anything that is infected if you know that, and no rotten meat. However, I've seen people say that they've given their chickens the scraps of carcasses and wild game that they've hunted, such as rabbit, turkey, or deer. We actually tried to give our chickens some deer meat on a few different occasions, and the learning lesson from that is it needs to be in small pieces, or like if you're just giving them the bones that have some flesh still left on them. But if you just give them large chunks of meat, they're going to peck at it and they really want it, but they can't really get to it. They're not going to, they don't have teeth or that kind of beak where they're going to be shredding chunks of meat apart. So just keep that in mind. But most recently, We let them eat tiny scraps from a leftover deer, and they were actually able to eat those, and that worked out much better. Another thing that you may not be aware of if you're new to chickens is that they will forage their own larger pieces of protein on occasion. Apart from the smaller bugs and worms that they normally eat, they most commonly will eat mice. Yes, you heard that right. Mice, spiders, and snakes if they're small enough and they happen across them. Snakes, though, can get caught in their crop or that first part of the digestive system. They are larger, longer, and really something they shouldn't eat. So it's one of those things that you hope that they don't find and eat any of those. We have seen a lot of snakes on our property in the spring and summer, but thankfully haven't had an issue with that yet. But I have seen them eat mice. It's pretty disturbing. And then you think about the fact that they're laying eggs for you after eating mice. But hey, this happens everywhere, no matter what kind of chicken and egg producer you are. So it is what it is. It's a little disturbing, and those are some stories for another time. Lastly, you can make or grow your own feed. So I would say you're most likely going to do this once you're at or near that 80% self-sufficiency lifestyle on your homestead. Meaning this would be something that you could do if you're already growing a robust garden that mostly feeds your family. So it's not a big deal to add in a few more fruits and veggies and grains that are great for chickens. Some of what they eat are things that we eat too. So you could also just grow more of what you're already growing to make their feed. You could then also share appropriate kitchen scraps, wild game scraps, and if they're free ranging, then you might have a fairly well-rounded diet and not need to buy feed. Along those lines, some people hatch and harvest their own mealworms and black fly larvae. I've watched other people's videos on that, so I encourage you to look into that if that is something that you're interested in. We do not currently have any experience in doing that at this time. One thing I did do this year that is now benefiting was grow a few decorative pumpkins in my garden. We enjoyed them in the fall, and now I'm storing them in my chilly basement that is like a root cellar. So I'm starting to grow my own food for my chickens, but I'm at the treat phase, I guess you could say. I'm able to supply them with some treats from around the property in different ways, but not a full-on supplemental feed. And in this case, growing one of their snacks costs me no money. I slice open a pumpkin and give it to them every couple of weeks or maybe once a month. It's a fantastic nutrient-dense treat for them, and it also helps give them something to do when they're stuck in the coop and run because of the weather. Pumpkin especially, but also other squash seeds and guts, are a natural dewormer for chickens, so it's a good way to stay ahead of that situation as well. I also grew acorn squash this year, and whenever I would cut one open for supper, I would just scoop out the seeds and the guts, put those aside in a bowl, and then take them out to my chickens later. And I love these two examples as being things that are multi-purpose on the homestead. That's part of the point, and it feels good to see that play out in reality. A quick note on the pumpkin seeds. Again, they're a very good thing for chickens, but since they eat them like candy, they can eat too much at once, and that can cause crop impaction or basically a blockage in their digestive system, which can be lethal or just make them really sick. So just give the pumpkins in moderation. Finally, I want to show you exactly what our staples are in terms of chicken food currently. These are the foods that we use, rotate and sprinkle in with a few treats. So that video is going to be coming up here next. I hope that was helpful. If you want to see more from Go and Grow Homestead, please like and subscribe. Also check out my link for Buy Me a Coffee. I have signed up for that now too, since I'm not monetized yet on YouTube. That is a way that you can say thank you and help contribute to our growth here. Thank you so much. So here are the combinations of things that we use. So this Kalmbach brand here, sometimes I'll switch it up with this one that kind of looks like, again, loose bird seed. It's a combination of seeds and grains together. And then layer pellets. I think it's 17% protein. But it looks a little different than this bag, but similar. It's that same brand. And then here's the scratch grains, which has a lot of cracked corn, but a few other grains in it. And then here is one of the worms. So this is black soldier fly larva, but you could do mealworms. This brand, it comes in a bag. It looks pretty much just like this, except it's like a purple color for the other type of fly. And she's like, I can see them, but I can't get to them. What is that about? I'll get you in just a minute, girl. And then of course pumpkins. And then so in the summer, they don't get the pumpkins because the pumpkins are growing, obviously. And they get, in terms of these kind of treats right here, they'll get less of those because they're free ranging outside. They're getting a lot of the stuff they need and want from there. But again, that's a feed. That's another feed. So we just kind of go back and forth between those.